And we're back on the Fowler Show. I wanted to take a moment to talk about the importance of independent media, and how independent media and media in general can inspire and empower a movement. And I think the place to start here, to talking about how media can inspire a movement, is to talk about what we've seen over the past 4 to 5 years in this country. What we've seen in this country over the past 4 to 5 years is this ideal, we've seen the clear division between the haves and the have-nots. And the haves always get their story told. The haves always get what they want, whether it be Wall Street getting a bailout or whether it be millionaires and billionaires getting tax cuts and tax benefits. The reason why nobody ever talks about these things a lot of times is because nobody's ever asked them to talk about it. On the Fowler Show, what we do each and every week is we try to give you the stories and the news of stories, usually the untold story. But sometimes the best the untold story is your story. The untold story is the story of your neighbors, your friends, your relatives, and your associates. And sometimes that untold story is never told, whether that be because you don't have connections to an outside media outlet to amplify your story, or whether that be because you don't think media has the power to change or amplify a story. But I want to tell you that the power of media to change a story and the power of media to change a situation is real, alive, and well. Think about it. Think about Trayvon Martin, for example. George Zimmerman was not arrested when Trayvon Martin was killed. He's actually let go. But not only because of civil rights leaders and folks pushing for change, but because the cameras showed up, because people organized, and that organizer was layered on top of a media plan. Now, I'm not sure, I wasn't down there, so I don't know if they had a concrete, contrite media plan. But because they used media platforms to elevate what was happening down in Florida, Trayvon, at minimum, George Zimmerman got a trial. So I say to all those folks out there today listening to this show, whether you be an old person, a young person, an organizer, an activist, a communications director, a member of Congress, any of these things, understand how important and how powerful not only media, but independent media is to changing the outcomes of situations. It takes all of us working together to make that happen. I can't be the only one. I tell people all the time, yes, I know our show is the youngest syndicated progressive radio show in the country. And yes, I know we're the youngest syndicated African American show in the country. I can't be the youngest syndicated show forever. I refuse to be. Because I can only tell the story of my generation, the story of my time, the story of my community. But there's somebody younger than me that is in their community that needs to tell their story, and they need to create their platform to do that. So I say to you out there tonight, if you are trying to find a way to create real social and systematic change and create and find real ways to get electoral victories, we have got to use all the resources that we have to make that possible. And whether that resource is your local college radio station or that resource is taking to owned media, which is your Twitter, your YouTube, your Facebook page, or whether that is getting on your cell phone and recording something and putting it on Vine or putting it on Instagram and detailing and showing your real story. We have got to use all the power that we have at our fingertips to make change real, alive, and well. It can't just be one form or another form. It can't just be knocking on doors. It can't just be organized registering voters. We have to combine that like a very well layered cake. We got to come up with a concrete message that works for everybody. And then we got to build that message into on the ground. Build that message to those that we can't reach on the ground. Use that message on the airwaves, television, radio, newspapers, your own media, your social media, and push out our story. Right now is our time. The movement is real. And the movement might not be televised, but the movement will be liked, it will be retweeted, and it will be on YouTube. And it will be on Facebook. And so that means it requires that we tell our story. And we use media as a power to push for electoral victories. If we want comprehensive immigration reform, we need to take to the airwaves and talk about why it's important. If we want to pass the Employee Non-Discrimination Act, we need to take to the airways and tell why it's important. If we want to raise the minimum wage, we need to take to the airways and tell why it's important. If we truly and really want an end to the school to prison pipeline, we have to hold our elected officials accountable, and there's nothing that holds elected official more accountable than cameras in their face asking questions they don't want to answer. But that requires that we tell our story, that requires us thinking outside the box, and that requires us stopping doing business as usual. Don't get me wrong. We've got to knock on doors. We've got to register voters. We've got to engage people. But beyond engaging them, we've got to uplift and elevate their stories to the masses. If we really want to create an echo chamber for change, it requires us to use every tool that we have to make that possible. That means it also requires that we use media as one of those tools. So I say to all of you out there today, if you're listening to this show, if you're watching this on YouTube, now is the time to get engaged. Now is the time to take back collective power. And taking back collective power and ending all the strife, ending all the struggle requires that we change how we do change. And that means we use everything that we have, especially for younger folk. Those folks 35 and under. Our voices need to be heard. It's time for us to increase our media representation. It's time for us to get out there and tell our stories. It really is. We can't wait on our parents to do it. We can't wait on major institutions to do it. We have got to be the ones to tell our story. Let nobody steal your story from you. My mom always used to tell me growing up, the stone the builder refuses will always become the chief and cornerstone. Actually, it's in the Bible too, right? And those words are truer now than ever before. So what I say to you guys all today, if we don't want to be the stone, if our generation, and our generation is close to being the stone being refused, you look at the statistics. You look at the fact that we have a student debt rate at $1.2 trillion and counting. You look at the fact that the youth unemployment rate's in double digits. You look at the fact that the unemployment rate amongst African Americans are in double digits. The unemployment rate amongst Latinos and brown folks are in double digits. It requires that we tell their story. First, we got to own it. Then we got to find it. Then we got to organize it. We also got to tell it. Go tell it on the mountains, over the hills, and everywhere. It is time for us to tell this story to the world, because the world, let me tell you something. Let me be very real with you and real about this, because it's some true stuff. You look at those folks that are on the right. And I love them as people. But the reason that they've been able to amass so much power, and people always wonder why, think about it. My radio colleague, Rush Limbaugh, talks to 7 million people each and every day. Lars Larson, 2.5 million. How many people are you talking to? How many people can you organize? Can you knock on don't get me wrong, as a collective, we could knock on 2.5 million doors, and as a collective, we could knock on 7 million doors. But can you knock on 7 million doors each and every day? Nobody can do that. But Rush Limbaugh could talk to 7 million people each and every single day, creating an echo chamber of conservatism that is bringing this country to its knees. What can we do to beat that back? How we beat that back? We create a media mechanism that's talking to 7 million people each and every day. On top of the fact that we know we're better on the ground. We know we're better organizers. We know how to mobilize. We're better. We can register more people to vote. We can do all those things. But you tie that to the fact that we can talk to 7 million people each and every day. And let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen, we can rock this world from the inside out.